And with that, I would like to actually introduce Ms. Anna Ekstedt, who is the Swedish ambassador at large for combating trafficking in human beings. She has a broad experience of working in counter trafficking in Sweden as well as internationally, and has, among other things, served as the IOM and Council of the Baltic Sea States, the European Commission in Brussels, the Swedish Gender Equality Agency, the Swedish Migration Board, the Country Administration Board of Stockholm, the Swedish Ministry of Justice, the Swedish Ministry of Employment, as well as the Swedish Ministry of Foreign Affairs. Dear Ambassador, the floor is yours for closing remarks.
Thank you so much, Tatiana, and thank you, Odir, and also Konrad-Adenauer-Stiftung and Gemeinsam, gegen Menschenhandel for organizing this important and very timely event. And I do apologize that I wasn't able to join you in the panel yesterday when we were discussing the role of destination countries in preventing trafficking. But I will give you sort of a few words from and also allow me to share a few experience of the Swedish experience of addressing the demand for trafficking for sexual exploitation. And as you have been discussing now during this conference, it's clear that we see that the risk of trafficking and the presence of trafficking already from the Russian aggression in Ukraine. We are receiving horrific reports on sexual violence and rape against women, and also different forms of trafficking of women, girls, and boys. We can, of course, never accept that people fleeing war end up in exploitation and abuse in our countries. And to prevent further exploitation and safeguard the protection and support to victims, it's important now that we ensure a relevant gender-sensitive approach to the crisis. There has already been an impressive, I must say, and fast response to the immediate threats of trafficking in Ukraine, as well as in the neighboring countries. And this has been done both by UN actors, state actors, NGOs, as well as also the EU. And Sweden has also increased our humanitarian response by 70 million euros, and making sure also that anti-trafficking efforts are included in the humanitarian response operations. But of course, now, in addition to responding to the immediate needs in Ukraine and with identification and protection measures at the borders, we also need to make sure now that we have long-term measures in place, that we are resilient, and that we are making sure that we can have safe transit and referral of victims and refugees and potential victims of trafficking. And there is a pressing need in the efforts ahead to enhance cooperation and coordination and link knowledge and experience in addressing and preventing different forms of gender-based violence, and also enhancing SRHR, and also sort of connecting that work with the anti-trafficking work. And we definitely need to remind ourselves about the need to address the main root cause of trafficking, namely the demand. Trafficking exists due to the fact that someone earns money of this and exploiting people. And when it comes specifically then to trafficking for sexual exploitation, we need to see what the demand is, and the fact that people are buying sexual services are also contributing to trafficking for sexual exploitation. And we're also, as you have, I'm sure you have discussed the depressing figures from the OSCE, the presented data on the high increase of online searches for Ukraine pornography and also Ukrainian escorts, which shows that what we're up against, in the sense that what we need to prevent exploitation by informing refugees about their rights, as well as risk of exploitation and trafficking, but very much also raise awareness in society and challenge negative norms and gender stereotypes. Countries of destination now truly have a responsibility to identify and protect victims, and these prevention and protection mechanisms also needs to be there when exploitation takes place online. Addressing the demand that fosters sexual exploitation of women and children is a high priority for the Swedish government. As you are aware, Sweden has a legislation that bans the purchase of sexual services, and we have seen that this is an important tool to prevent exploitation and also trafficking. Just to say a few words, we had the ban since 1999. We were then the first country in the world to criminalize the purchase, but not the sale of sex. So people in prostitution are not in any way being criminalized. The Swedish view is that prostitution causes harm both to the individuals involved, but also to society at large, not least as it affects gender equality negatively. by exclusively targeting the demand, the aim is to, of course, disrupt the market, but at the same time aiming at equalizing the inherent power imbalance between men and women. And we were the first country in the world, as I mentioned, but then as you're aware, quite a few countries have followed suit. And what was first mostly referred to as the Swedish or the Nordic model is now more and more talked about as the equality model. And this is, of course, a development that we highly welcome. And we're working very closely with France on this. As you are aware, France have a similar legislation, and we're implementing a joint diplomatic strategy together with them. And this is a cooperation that we highly value in order to have impact on addressing trafficking for sexual exploitation. And we have, with the legislation in itself banning the purchase, but not in any way sort of banning or targeting people in prostitution, is a clear signal. And we've seen in Sweden that it's had a normative effect. Statistics have shown that street prostitution has gone down significantly, and it has also worked as a deterrent for traffickers and been an important tool for law enforcement in trafficking cases. And even more importantly, so we also see that the legislation has a normative effect in that it has reduced demand, and we have a strong support for the legislation amongst the population in Sweden. But of course, a ban in itself cannot prevent sexual exploitation, and it has to sort of come with be complemented with social efforts. People in prostitution do need solid exit strategies and support and different kinds of assistance, just as well as victims of trafficking need protection and support. And the Swedish government will launch. We have seen that there is a need for support to people increased need for people in prostitution. So the government has said that they will launch a new exit program for people in prostitution. People in prostitution, whether it be girls, women, LGBTI people, are often extremely vulnerable, and we need to do more to prevent people from being recruited and also ensure that they receive the support they need and also are entitled to receive. Prevention is, of course, also about changing norms and attitude. In order to sort of change the long-term demand, we need to include boys and men, and also discussing harmful norms and gender stereotypes that justify violence and restrict women's and girls' scope for action of life choices. And we also need to work with the demand. For example, in Sweden, buyers, people who bought sex and wants to stop doing this can on a voluntary basis be offered social support and therapy. And providing a comprehensive sexuality education is very important as well. It's a significant part in reducing gender-based violence. The Swedish government has recently decided to update the school curricula when it comes to comprehensive sexuality education and ensuring that boys and girls are equipped with an understanding that sex must be based on consent and free will. But it's clear that we all need to do much more together to address this crime. As countries of destination, we do have a sincere responsibility to address the demand, as no matter what national laws look like, all member states of the UN and all the EU member states have an obligation to address the root cause of trafficking, namely the demand. We have to see this, and independent of this, if this is being done by legal measures or others, some measures need to be in place in order to stop, prevent, and finally also stop this crime. We have many, many challenges ahead of us, and women and children fleeing Ukraine will unfortunately continue to be under sustained threat of being trafficked. That's why we need resilience in ensuring that we uphold their rights and the needs of women, girls, and boys, and that we have their best interest in sort of the focus ahead of us in our joint efforts ahead. And all in this prevention work, addressing the demand really needs to be included and integrated in everything, all the measures that we take. And with that, I really want to thank you for this conference and looking forward to future cooperation with all of you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Anna, and thank you for joining us today. And the Swedish example has been a very important one throughout the conference. So we look forward to further discussions on this and other topics raised at this conference at many other occasions. So thank you very much.